This is a quick Emacs Bytes screencast about debugging in Emacs, particularly Emacs Lisp. So I'm going to go through the basics of edebug and show some stuff about macro debugging too. So the first thing we need if we're going to debug something is some code. So I'm going to write a function to map over the symbols in Emacs. This is something that isn't in Emacs but that I need a lot of the time. So it takes a regex. And maps over the atoms, and for every atom when it matches the regex against the string version of the symbol name, we push it into the list. Map atoms is unusual because it doesn't return anything. You have to do that for it. Okay. So let's just prove that it works. We've got two string match functions, which is absolutely right. So now if we want to debug that, what do we have to do? Well, to debug something we have to instrument it first, and that means just evaluating it in a slightly different way so that the debugger can understand it. Pretty much the same way that the C compiler has to be run with debug flags to include debugging symbols. This is something that a lot of languages do. So we're going to move into the function, and then we're going to do Control U, escape, Control X. Control U, escape, Control X. You can see in the echo area that it now says edebug list symbols. That just means that edebug evaluated the list symbols. So now if we come down here and evaluate that, you can see in the gutter that there's a little arrow marker, and that shows us where the debugger has entered. We can step through now with space, and this will step through each expression. So we've stepped into the loop of map atoms. Did that symbol name match? No, it didn't. And it will keep doing that. In order to quit, we can do Q. Any way that you try and enter that function, it will do it the same. We can eval an expression list symbols, RE, something like that. Let's put that on the front so that we don't get loads. You can see it just jumped in. If we want to evaluate to the end, instead of just quitting, if we want to evaluate to the end of the function, we can use G. And there you can see in the echo area we got a whole bunch of stuff. If we wanted to only capture the event when something happens, say we want to come here, we want to know when it actually pushes, and we're going to see lots of symbols that aren't going to match. Emacs has got thousands in it, so we don't want to step through every single one, but we've only got a few that are going to match. And when they do match, they're going to come here. Well, we can press H to say here, and then we'll see that's RE search backwards. That's great. Okay, and then it will carry on. So we could come here again. The alternative to doing that is to set a breakpoint. So we could just press B, and now we can say G again, and it will continue to the breakpoint. Say G again, and it will continue to the breakpoint. If we want to continue beyond through the breakpoint, we can do Shift G, capital G, and that will continue right to the end of the function, ignoring the breakpoint. So what if this was a function? Let's take it out, and instead of a def, instead of a lambda, let's make it a function, and we'll call it next symbol matcher. Okay, and we need to take a regex and the sim. So now we need to change this to sim and this to sim, and I'm going to evaluate that function. And now we'll change this to call Nick symbol matcher. Okay. So that's pretty much the same thing. Because we've got dynamic scope, this list here should still be available to us inside this function. So if we evaluate this and call, oh, we're not passing enough at it. So we'll have to make another lambda. That's better. Right, so we still get the same result. What if we want to debug that though? So I instrument it and I call it. Now we're just jumping over the definition. So what if I want to jump into here? I can do I. Sometimes it doesn't work. I. And I will jump into the definition of the function. And now everything's good. Once I've done that, it'll do it every time. If I want to avoid that, doing that, I need to reevaluate that function so that it's not instrumented anymore. And there we go. So that's the basics of edebug. I also wanted to show you macro debugging, because that's kind of an interesting area. There's a particularly good tool for macro debugging called MacroStep. So let me just install that. MacroStep is available in Marmalade. I'm sure it's in Melpa too. And MacroStep is a macro expander. So what does that mean? Well, let's convert Nick symbol matcher into a macro that also takes the body. So we can take the body out of this function, and we're going to put it in here somewhere. And we're going to convert this to a macro. It's going to take regex and the symbol still, but now it's a macro. So it's going to embed the regex and the symbol, and it's also going to take a body. So when the stuff matches, it's going to evaluate the body. So let's do that. And now down here, we can get rid of that and replace it with when symbol match. We need regex, and we need A. And we're going to push A into the list. So that's all good. And it still results in the same thing, so it works. But what if we wanted to understand if something was happening, we wanted to understand what is going on inside that macro? Well, MacroStep lets us expand that macro. So MacroStep expand, and it just embeds what the replacement, the Lisp evaluator would actually see is. You can see that it hasn't quite done it. When is also a macro, and I can further expand when. If I press E. If I press E again, it'll further expand push. You can see that they're both very simple macros. Pressing C will contract them. Pressing C again will contract all of it. and then I have to macro expand again. But when it's macro expanded, I can further instrument the function, and then it'll jump over or into the macro code. So if you've got a particular problem with a macro, either that you've written or someone else has written, you can see exactly what the macro is doing very, very often with edebug and macro step. So that's, if you want to contract, you can do Q as well. So that's pretty much it. Everything that I wanted to show you. There is a lot more, but those are the basics. Thanks very much.